The 27th conference is now drawing to a close, and I agree with John that it was a great success. I too was a bit skeptical and certainly missed opportunities to hang out with friends and colleagues, but I think we did a good job of making the best of the situation right now. First, I want to announce the student awards. Each of these students will receive a $100 award. The best student poster goes to Sarah Trujillo from Northern Michigan University with her poster Variation in Brown Bear Gut Microbiomes, Implications for Conservation and Management. So congratulations to Sarah and her co-authors. And the best student talk goes to Zachary David from Old Dominion University in Norfolk with his presentation, Asiatic Black Bear Resting Metabolism at the Southern Edge of their Range. Congratulations also to Zachary and his co-authors. One of the perks of the IBA presidency, and there aren't a lot, trust me, is the ability to give Presidents Awards. We have so many accomplished, deserving members, it's always difficult to decide who to recognize. But one thing that happened at our Ljubljana meeting was there was a group photo of attendees who had 30 plus years working on bears. It was cool to see how many old timers there were at the conference. So when I was thinking about Presidents Awards, I decided to acknowledge a couple of people who each had careers spanning over 50 years in the bear business. So today I want to recognize two very special colleagues, Vic Barnes and Jack Lenfler. Vic Barnes had a long and distinguished career. He was raised in Colorado, received his master's and bachelor's from Colorado State. His career as a biologist and work on bears spans over 50 years. Vic first worked on black bear activities and population status in Yellowstone from 1965 to 67 for his master's project, around the same time craigheads were doing their pioneering work on grizzly bears there. Though he was sidetracked by employment related to animal damage and reforestation in the Pacific Northwest, luckily for bears, he took a job in Alaska in 1982 as Kodiak brown bear project leader for the Alaska Science Center. He conducted research on population ecology of brown bears on Kodiak Refuge and participated in cooperative bear research and management programs between the refuge and Alaska Department of Fish and Game. In Alaska, working relationships between state and federal biologists aren't always good, but Vic was able to navigate the intricacies of interagency relations and found productive ways to collaborate with state biologists. Upon retiring in 1998, he continued to do contract bear work in Alaska, and since 2008 has been manager for the Kodiak Brown Bear Trust, established in 1981 to mitigate impacts of Terror Lake Hydro Project on brown bears and their habitat in and around Kodiak Refuge. The Bear Trust works with partners to promote sound and sustainable management of brown bears on the Kodiak Archipelago. Vic's also worked as a bear viewing guide since 2014 for Kodiak Native Corporation's bear viewing program, where he uses both his understanding of bear behavior and his ability to get along well with all sorts of people. To me, he represents the best kind of wildlife biologist. He's a careful, critical thinker with lots of in-depth knowledge on a variety of things from animal behavior to habitat, and one who is always willing to share and help out others. He's developed good working relationships with people in other agencies. He's a good field hand and has earned the respect of so many people over the years. I've always had high regard for Vic and all that he's done for bears, and it's an honor to recognize him with an IBA Presidents Award. I also asked him if he had any words of advice he would like to pass on to younger bear people in IBA. He told me, quote, "I've been extremely fortunate to enjoy 54 years working in wildlife biology and management. For those entering the profession, I would advise taking full advantage of the many technological advances that have been made, but not to forget the reason you chose this career, a passion for wildlife and wild places. Take time to go into the field and be a naturalist from time to time." A second lesson that is continually reinforced for me is the importance of collaboration. Cooperation with peers, and especially those in different agencies and organizations, is the key to successful science-based wildlife management. The concept of collaboration is frequently discussed, but too often not implemented. I have been blessed to have been a wildlife biologist, and particularly to have had the opportunity to work many years with those special animals known as bears. Congratulations, Vic, for a career to be proud of, and thanks for all you have done to help bears over the years. Jack Lenfler is another respected Alaska scientist who's been a bear biologist for more than half a century. Originally from Montana, Jack worked for both U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. He was a pioneer conducting groundbreaking research on both polar bears and brown bears in Alaska. Jack's career is the epitome of a lifetime achievement for bear conservation. Jack first started work in Alaska with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in 1957, before Alaska was even a state. In 1963, he went to work for Alaska Fish and Game and led their brown bear and polar bear programs from 1964 to 69. Jack attended the first bear workshop in the Yukon in 1968, the one that eventually led to the formation of IBA. And along with Mike Pelton and Ed Folk, Jack organized the third international IBA conferences in New York and Moscow in 1974 and served as editor for those proceedings. Another product of those 74 meetings was the production of the first newsletter by Jack, titled Bear Biology Association Newsletter, a term which would eventually become the formal name of the organization before it was changed again to IBA, and that newsletter eventually became the IBN. Jack was very active in the early days of what was then called the BBA, serving as newsletter editor. He was elected to the first ever BBA council in 1977, and again from 83 to 85, and he was our vice president from 1980 to 82. His expertise, wise counsel, and willingness to further the cause of bear conservation are widely known around the world. He was also among the first members of the IUCN Polar Bear Specialist Group. Jack lived in Barrow, which is now called Utqiagvik, to focus on polar bears for 3 years from 69 to 72. He moved over to Fish and Wildlife Service to continue pioneering polar bear research, including many expeditions out on the Arctic ice pack. Jack pioneered some early helicopter polar bear capture techniques and was a major player in early conservation efforts, warning of overharvest that was taking place. Jack also understood the importance of what we now would call Alaska Natives' traditional ecological knowledge of sea ice and Arctic wildlife and worked closely with them. In 1977, he moved to Juneau to lead the state's wildlife management and research program in Southeast Alaska and played a significant leadership role in conservation work on the Tongass Forest. Following his retirement in 1981, Jack continued to be actively involved in wildlife conservation throughout Alaska, serving on the Polar Bear Specialist Group, Stellar Sea Lion Recovery Team, U.S. Marine Mammal Commission, and the Alaska Board of Game, where he rigorously insisted on applying science as the foundation for the board's allocation decision. Jack's a fellow of the Arctic Institute of North America, a past president of the Alaska chapter of the Wildlife Society, and has written many valuable scientific papers. As John Shane wrote to me about Jack, quote, "For more than half a century, Jack's consistent voice, based on impeccable science, driven by straightforward honesty and integrity, and underpinned with a resolve of steel, has been a beacon for conservation across Alaska and beyond. Jack's scientific integrity and honesty have always been his hallmark and an inspiration to his professional colleagues and Alaska conservationists. Congratulations to Jack Lenfler for an amazing career, and thank you for all your contributions to helping bears." Jack turned 90 this year, and he is a true inspiration to a lot of us. I have a few more thanks. I want to acknowledge some of the other people who make IBA the organization that it is. We've all said it over and over again, but we can't thank the organizing committees who persevered and made this conference possible, especially Lori Roberts, Kate Smith, and Andrea Morehouse. Their efforts have been epic. Micheline Mamon stepped in and helped compile a book of conference abstracts. As John mentioned, Stephen's support staff helped to keep everything working. And, thanks to all of the people who attended, presented, and participated in the discussions. Our sponsors generously helped us pull this off: Counter Assault, MPG Ranch, Vital Ground, Wildlife Genetics International, University of Montana College of Forestry, Polar Bears International, Defenders of Wildlife, and the Montana chapter of the Wildlife Society. I also want to thank some other people who have volunteered to help IBA provide programs and services we value so much, but who are moving on. Paolo Cucci, who chaired the RNC Grants Committee since Fred Dean passed away in 2014. Mike Jabot, who chaired our Experience and Exchange Grant since 2015. John Swenson, whose hard work with Ursus has made our journal a publication to be proud of. And Julia Bevins, who started us on the road to a successful grants program and continues to this day to help raise funds. I also want to thank some of our new and returning donors. You know, the Bevins and Homer funds have provided consistent donation over many of years that have sustained our RNC grants. And we've got a new fellowship program that included donations from Gail Contreras, who set up a fellowship in memory of her late husband, Glenn Contreras, who was actively involved with IBA for many years and a supporter of our Bear Conservation Fund. Elizabeth Grace Fuller Bivens Fund, created by Bill Bivens in memory of his deceased daughter. And Gordon Stenhouse, who's been a loyal member and enthusiastic supporter of IBA over the years in many capacities, from 7 years on council to various committee chairs and working on position statements to the structural evolution and transition planning. He facilitated donations of equipment to projects in Gobi and Ecuador, and most recently, he and FRI have provided IBA a 3-year fellowship grant and a generous $10,000 gift as well. And one of our new donors, the Hayes Family Foundation, has stepped in to support our work in bears and made generous donations to both grants and operations. We've been lucky to receive other sizable contributions from other individuals as well. Thanks to all those who have trusted us to be good stewards of their contributions to IBA and for bear work. It's been a great conference. Seeing so many old and new faces, even if just on screens, reminds me of why I care so much about our bear family. Let's all try to be good ancestors and leave the planet a bit better than we found it. Take care, everyone.